You know, next to a box of matches or a lighter, probably the most efficient way to light a fire that I'm aware of is by use of a Ferro rod. I've got a bunch of these things around the house in various places. This one I found in my truck in the center console this morning. It's one I'm going to be using a little bit, some of the demonstrations in a few minutes. I've got one on my official I'm going camping necklace. I've got one tied to the sheath of my camp knife, and here's a big one. It's 6 inches long, a half inch in diameter. It's the one I let young scouts play with from time to time. It just throws showers of sparks. A few days ago, I asked myself how many little tinders could I find just walking around the house and seeing what I could start with a ferro rod, and I came up with this collection. I think I counted about 15 things, and this is by no means an exhaustive collection of things that can be lit with a ferro rod. This is just stuff I found in my basement, out in the garage, and some of my fire making kits. And as I started thinking about them, I realized they kind of fell into some categories, and being the engineer that I am, I had to write it all down. And I thought I'd go through some of these initial tinders, what I call initial tinders, and talk about them just a little bit. It's a little breezy tonight, so I'm gonna keep my piece of paper held down with a couple of rocks. It's early June in Ohio, and the cottonwood trees are shedding their down, spreading their spores or seeds all over the place. And unless the fire gods are messing with me, the cottonwood down is usually pretty easy to light. The first 2 or 3 tinders usually catch quickly and burn out very quickly. They're best used as an initial tinder that lights some other secondary tinder, maybe a tinder bundle. By themselves, they're commonly not going to be sufficient to start a fire. We'll see. See if we can give it a try. Cottonwood down. Caught very quickly, burned out very quickly. Real good for igniting a secondary tinder, maybe as part of a tinder bundle to get things going. But all by itself, it's just so fast and so quick, probably won't be terribly helpful to you. Let me just scoot this over here out of the way for the time being. I'll pick that up later. Another is cattail down. Cattail down, I picked these up. Got a lot of cattails in my area. I picked this cattail up and a whole bunch of others late last fall, and as they were just starting to open up. And just like the cottonwood down, this stuff typically will ignite very quickly. It also tends to burn out very quickly. Let's see what we can do. Didn't burn thoroughly. It's a little breezy tonight, kind of blowing it out. Well, there you see. It's easy to ignite, probably not sufficient to light a fire by itself. Might want to bury it inside of a tinder bundle and ignite some sort of secondary tinder. It's wanting to go out real quick on me tonight. I don't want to spend more time with it. Let's set that over there. Next on the list is just jute twine that I have scraped up with my camp knife and made into a collection of fine fuzz. When I'm first teaching scouts how to use a ferro rod, usually it's a little fuzzed up ball of jute twine that we use, Makes a big fire, doesn't last very long, burns up pretty quickly. Again, would be used to ignite some sort of secondary tinder. Let's see if we can get it to go. Easy to do, fun, scouts love it. You can buy, a mile long. One of my neighbors set off their horn. You can get just seeming like miles of this stuff for a few dollars at Walmart. And this clearly burns a lot longer than the cattail down. We'll just scrape this over here. Let it burn out. The next one that's real fun is magnesium shavings. Magnesium shavings. Magnesium burns real hot. It burns at about 5,600 degrees. If the wind doesn't blow it away. This stuff is pretty cheap. I bought this stuff on eBay. As a matter of fact, I think I bought a half a pound, which was a box like this big, for under 10 bucks, including shipping. This is just a small sample that I have of it. This stuff tends to burn really super hot, like 5,600 degrees Fahrenheit, but it doesn't burn very long. You might want to use it to ignite some other tinder bundle, or you might want to put it inside your fire lay to ignite your fire. Let's see what we can do with it. Oops. There we go. Once it goes, it's hot. Golly. You're probably leaving a mark in my old cutting board that I'm using tonight. See, it doesn't last very long. It's really hot. It was crazy hot. I could feel it. I had to back up away from it. And it'll leave a little molten ball of melted magnesium down there. It'll light your fire, but it doesn't last very long. You have to put it in some other tinder bundle, some small twigs, sticks, and have some sort of secondary tinder to ignite. Look at that. That's hot for you. All right, what's else is on my list? All right, now the next, so those first few they burn real fast, they burn real hot, especially the magnesium. But they don't burn very long. You need to use that to ignite some sort of secondary tinder. The next few they burn a little bit longer, and they can be used maybe to directly light your fire. The first one is the ubiquitous ball of cotton with some Vaseline in it. Probably you've all done that. Works most of the time. It's usually pretty easy. In fact, this was the first way I ever learned how to light a fire without using a match. See if we can do it. Now the good news is that will burn a long time, and it'll burn pretty hot. You can build a fire up from there without having to be in too big of a hurry. It'll burn as long as that Vaseline is going. And I'm going to pick that up and move it over here. Let that burn for a while. See how long that goes. That's a pretty good fire starter. I've had good success with it. Starting with virtually nothing other than that, you can start with building up your fire with a little bit, little fine sticks and twigs and grass and things like that. That'll burn probably for, I don't know, better part of 5 minutes. We'll just have to see. The next one is hand sanitizer. I'm actually not going to try and light this tonight. It burns very readily. It's highly flammable, especially the stuff that's 60 to 70% alcohol. The thing is, the flame is virtually invisible. I was playing with this stuff earlier in the day, and I was getting frustrated thinking that I wasn't getting it to light. and then I happened to hold my hand over it and it got hot. I realized it was actually burning, but I just couldn't see the flame. So I'm not going to bother with igniting this, but hand sanitizer, high alcohol content stuff is really good for lighting fires. Next thing on my list is fat wood. Fat wood. Pine resin soaked wood. I harvested all of this. It smells like turpentine, smells really good. I harvested all of this from the crotches of dead limbs on a standing dead pine tree at a local Boy Scout camp. For those of you who know where Cricket Holler is, it was behind the quartermaster shed. What I have in here is just some fat wood shavings. I just took the back of my knife, scraped down some shavings. Fat wood, pine resin soaked wood. See if we can get that to light. Now this stuff usually burns really hot for quite a while. Sometimes the fire gods are not working with me. About every time I get it a little bit to light. There we go. Finally. I kept banging it with my hand. Every time I would see it light, I'd hit it with my hand. But there you go. Sometimes the fire gods are not working with me. Fat wood. You notice that cotton ball is still going. Fat wood will burn a while too. All right, where are we at? Birch bark. We've got some birch bark in my tinder pile down in the basement. Just off of a paper birch tree. Let's see if I can get that lit without doing what I was doing with the fat wood. Gotta crunch it up a little bit. I've noticed when I'm lighting the birch bark, it ignites best if a spark catches like an edge of the bark. It doesn't like to land on the surface of the bark. It seems to catch on an edge, and that's a little bit random. Let's see if we can get it to go. What do you know? This afternoon when I was practicing a bit, the birch bark was giving me a fit and the fat wood lit right up. In this case, the birch bark went up on the first strike. You never know how it's going to go. When it comes to lighting fires with something other than a lighter and a match, persistence and patience are your friends. All right, what are we up to now? So the next few bits of tinder are more appropriate. They don't flame up so much as they smolder, and they would be best for transferring into a tinder bundle to blow into flame and light in the usual way. The first one, no surprises here, is just plain old char cloth. There you go. You see that smoldering? Now you would just transfer that into a tinder bundle and blow it to flame like you ordinarily would. Lots of videos on that. I'm not going to demonstrate that just yet. Another one of my favorites is what I call nitrated tinder, or slow match. Got another video on this. This is just a piece of all cotton denim that I have soaked in a diluted solution of potassium nitrate or saltpeter. Again, this won't flame up. It'll just smolder real hot, and then you would transfer it to a tinder bundle and blow it into flame. There it goes. You see that? Oh! This stuff lights really, really, really easy with a ferro rod. It'll also light with flint and steel. It's just really magnificent stuff. It's easy to make. Got another video on how to make this nitrated tinder or slow match. It's really great stuff. My piece of my piece of char cloth is still smoldering. That piece of nitrated cotton or slow match, that'll go for easily a good 5 minutes or so. All right, what's up on my list now? Next one is ground up punkwood. Here's a chunk of punkwood, just kind of spongy, mostly rotten wood that I brought home with me and left to dry in the garage. I've ground up a bunch of it. Actually, my spoon is over here. Nope, my spoon's over here. You can grind up your punkwood with a rock, the file, lots of ways to do it. And again with this one, this ground up punkwood dust, things are working the way they're supposed to. You catch a spark and then it will slowly build into an ember that you would transfer to a tinder bundle. Let's see if we can get it to go. All right. I don't know if you can see it. It may have went out. Let's try again. I had a little ember going. Go. You see that? That ember is building. Let me set this over here out of the way so get away from the smoke. And what you're seeing here is there's an ember building. You see it smoking? If you let that sit there for a few minutes, an ember will coalesce. I need to let this sit for a little while longer but before too long, that will turn into a fairly good size ember that you can then transfer to a tinder bundle and blow into a flame. If you really want to get this punkwood dust to work well for you, mix in a little bit of wood ash from a fire you've had recently. See how that works. Now I'm gonna let that smolder a bit. Next up on my list is shelf mushroom dust. Gotta get this stuff out first. See how that's going? That's just really building up a big ember. You got to be patient with it. You got to let it grow. All right. So this pile right here is ground up shelf mushroom, cracked cap polypore, or CCP. This is a kind of fungus that grows around here quite readily on black locust trees. I've got boxes of this stuff down in the basement sitting out to dry. Crack a piece of it off, grind it, make yourself some shelf mushroom dust. Again, it's real similar to the ground punkwood. If things go well, it'll catch a spark and it'll slowly grow into an ember. And usually this stuff makes a much better ember. I'm trying not to get into that one. Let me move just a little bit. There, that might help me. There it goes. A little small. There we go. Can you see it smoldering right here? And again, just like with the punkwood dust, this will slowly grow into a good size ember. And the shelf mushroom dust tends to burn quite a bit hotter, burns a lot longer, will make a better ember. If you want to make a better ember with punkwood dust, add in some ashes, just ashes out of your fireplace. I think it's the little bits of charcoal in the ash that will help the punkwood dust burn a whole lot hotter. But you can see the shelf mushroom is already burning into a really hot, smoldering ember. See there? See there? It's already coalescing into a good ember. I'd let that sit for a little while longer before I tried to blow it into a flame. But you can see how that goes. Let's let them sit there and smolder for a little bit. All right, what we got? Oh, yeah. What I have here is a piece of horse's hoof fungus, Fomes fomentarius. I've got a slice of it here. I've got another video lighting some of this stuff with primitive percussion with marcasite and flint. Well, if you scratch up the amadou layer real well, my target's so small, sometimes this is hard to do. Let's see if we can do it over there. My target's so small, sometimes this is hard to do. But if I can get that piece lit, it will also grow into an ember, and then I can use that to transfer it to a tinder bundle. Let's see what we can do. Hit it. Why not? My target zone is so small. Ah, went out on me. We're about to get it. It keeps going out on me. I probably should have cut myself a little bit bigger piece of mushroom here. You keep catching. So flip it over on the other side and give it one more try, then we're going to quit. It's caught 3 or 4 times and then it goes out on me. I can't tell you why. All right, let's give up on that one for now. Sometimes the fire guides are just not cooperating. All right, next to last one is more punk wood. But this time I'm gonna take my punk wood and I'm gonna rub in some ashes out of my fire pit. Again, I think it's some of the charcoal bits that help this create a really good tinder. Let's see what we can do. No, almost caught. There we go. I made a tinder bundle earlier. Thought maybe we ought to see if we can get at least something to flame tonight. Got a little cottonwood down, cattail down, a little bit of cedar bark, pine needles. See what we can do. Whee! You gotta get something to flame, don't you? I have one more thing to show you. Rocket candy. This is a mixture of potassium nitrate and table sugar, 65% by weight potassium nitrate, stump remover, and 35% plain white table sugar, finely ground before mixing. I've never actually tried to start a fire with this. This is more of a novelty item than anything else. I'm gonna back up a little bit for it. You're good. Burns at about 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. I got a little bit on me. That's a lot of fun, huh? Sometimes you just got to goof off a little bit. Well, anyway, aside from not getting my horse's hoof fungus lit, and I don't know why, it would take the spark, but then it would go out. I'm going to have to do some more experimenting with that. I've gotten that to work many times. As a matter of fact, I was experimenting with it, got it to work this afternoon, and it worked just great. But sometimes the fire gods are not smiling. But anyway, this is by no means an exhaustive list of things you can use for primary tinder with a ferro rod. This was 15 that I found looking around the house. I could have brought out some steel wool, that'll work, but I didn't feel like wasting any. Dried grass later in the year will work. Gosh, just, all kinds of things will work. Anyway, hope you had fun. I did, especially with the rocket candy. Have a good evening.